Hello, and welcome to the continuation of our Solid Advice, Solid Solutions series. I am Willem Hattink, head of our private wealth management business here at SunTrust. Today we're going to discuss a topic that hits home for just about every one of us: managing your family's wealth across generations. Joining me are Jolene Godfrey. She is the CEO of Independent Means. It's an organization devoted to providing financial education for families. And Felicia Speechens. She is a managing director at SunTrust in our private wealth management business. To both of you, welcome.
Thank you, Will.
Jolene, when is the right time to begin preparing children to become beneficiaries?
Well, it's a different answer almost in every family, but we see the earlier the better, and by that I mean giving values to children by the time they're 3, 4, and 5. But it's also never too late, particularly in family businesses or family foundations. Really what you're looking at is developing the next generation, not just for the privileges of their wealth, but for the responsibilities as well. What we know is that no family would ever put a child on the tennis court with a racket and ball and expect them to do world-class tennis. And yet somehow we think about money in that way, and we just send them out and hope things will be all right.
What's the foundation that every child needs, whether they go into a family business or take a completely different route? They become a teacher, they become a boxer. How do they acquire this foundation?
Well, in the 21st century, every kid, no matter what, needs a kind of financial safety net. And so they're going to need, first of all, a fairly expanded vocabulary so they understand the terms of finance. Everything as simple as living within your means and compound interest to the terms of a credit statement or any other contract. But they also need to understand their entrepreneurial spirit. They need the values that the family holds dear. And once you develop that foundation, it doesn't matter if they're going to be a teacher or a member of the family business. They're prepared for everything.
So Felicia, you work with wealthy families every day. Many of the children that come into the bank have cash flow problems. They have been receiving money from trust from family members, but they need to stand on their own 2 feet. How are you helping them?
Right. Well, Willem, it's not unusual for us to work with adults that are grown and graduated from college and married and still don't know how to manage their money. They're used to getting money from their parents, or maybe they're the beneficiary of a trust. They don't understand how to live within their means, and either their parents don't realize it until it gets to a crisis situation, or they don't know what to do about it. We work with clients to help them analyze their resources, put together a cash flow, perhaps put together a plan to pay off debt and structure their assets to work for them. We help them make intelligent choices regarding their assets today and position them to achieve their plans for the future.
And that's not easy. What we're seeing is that there is a vast difference between the good intentions every family has and the intention that successful families have. And that, combined with understanding that it's not just about the money, is really part of what drives a family forward. You know, that ability to live within the means only comes from understanding what financial skills are. It only comes from really having a lot of practice over time. We actually talk about allowance 2.0 with teenagers who are going to have substantial funds as a way to get ready for that next stage of their life.
I think we all agree that parents really should prepare their children for the responsibilities of wealth. I mean, you don't just give your kids the keys to a car without giving them driving lessons, so let's talk about preparation. Felicia, sometimes the conversations get a little more complicated than just a checkbook. Felicia, tell us how a trust works.
Sure, Willem. A trust is simply a separate legal entity in the same sense that a partnership or a corporation is a unique legal entity structure. A trust is generally established by an individual to hold assets for the benefit of another. The grantor, the person who sets up the trust, may choose to use a trust rather than gifting the funds outright for a variety of reasons, including having multiple goals or purposes for the money, asset protection, or tax planning. Trusts address a variety of concerns people have. They can be established during life or at death. One of the ways that we can really help a grantor is by walking through the issues he should consider in establishing a trust. By understanding his priorities and concerns, as well as the family dynamics, and together with our real-world experience, we can help a grantor structure a trust that will meet his objectives, typically for many years after his death.
And what we're seeing is that that very process that you're describing is a very overwhelming one. And whether a young person is 18 or 28 or 38, when that first moment comes up when they're sitting with their advisors or their trust attorney, making the bridge between the technical conversation you're going to have with them and their experience is a skill unto itself. We've been using an animated short lately called Buck and Bill, Things to Do in America Before You're Dead, because what we see is that a little bit of irreverence actually is really helpful to break down that sense of, oh my God, this is such a big, overwhelming concept. And it is, again, why we often talk about how important it is to start early in families, to do financial preparation so that beneficiaries are really more responsible when they begin to have their first distributions.
Felicia, maybe you can share an example or how you're working with a trust and with the beneficiaries where it's a pretty complicated family.
Right. Well, Willem, one of the things that we see a lot is when there's a trust and the children from the first marriage are beneficiaries as well as the spouse from a second marriage. Having us facilitate discussions about the trust as well as addressing the technical terms often helps keep intact the personal relationship between the beneficiaries. To make these conversations successful, one of the critical factors is that the advisor has a positive relationship with the individuals involved. This is one of the areas where I think we excel in matching clients with advisors who have the right technical expertise, but also are a good personality match.
Well, and of course, what we're seeing is that subsidy of adult children is one of the biggest challenges families are facing today, not the least because the unemployment rate for 20-somethings is historically higher than it's been in a very long time. And what we see is those families who have been preparing early are not in crisis management when their kids are in their 30s and 40s, but financial education really can be that tool that intervenes early. So young people who understand cash flow and living within my means and saving and philanthropy and credit rules early on are much better prepared to come and work with a team who can be useful to them later on in life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, recently we began working with a family that had been a SunTrust banking client for a number of years. When the father passed away, the mother became aware that they were continuing to support their 38-year-old son. And while the son had a good job with a six-figure income, he also had a home in an expensive part of town as well as a home at the beach. With a lifestyle that included private school tuition for the children and a country club membership, he couldn't cover all these expenses on his salary. In the father's will, he had established trust for his son with the mother as the trustee. And the mother became increasingly concerned that her son would deplete the trust during his lifetime and nothing would be left for the grandchildren as her husband had intended. Also, as trustee of the trust, she found it virtually impossible to deny her son any request for money from the trust, and she came to us looking for help.
But how did you take care of Mom?
Well, we were able to put together a team of advisors to help the family. As a corporate fiduciary, SunTrust was able to assist the mother in making better choices about distributions from the trust in accordance with the trust terms. And we also assigned an advisor to work with the son, putting together his net worth and cash flow. We were able to identify areas where he could reduce expenses without changing his lifestyle and help him put together a budget he could live with. Ultimately, he felt both in control of his finances for the first time in his life, and he knew that his family would be well positioned for the future. It was a real sigh of relief for everyone involved.
Yeah.
You know, this family was really lucky to have your team, because what we're seeing is that often families don't get that. It's very comforting for families to know that they're not alone as they're trying to have these conversations now. There was a sea change about, 5 or 6 years ago. The S.C. Johnson family invited some of their peer families to come together for a long weekend to explore the answer to the question, what is it we need to do to prepare the next generation for the responsibilities of wealth? This used to be a taboo question. And today, thankfully, the work those families did over the course of several days helped us to map out some very concrete, specific, practical responses. And so now families not only are not alone, they're more comfortable having conversations about these topics.
There's no doubt that the landscape is changing. Family trees are getting a lot more complex these days. Providing our kids with the values, knowledge, and tools to prepare them financially is one of the most important things we can do for them. If you haven't had a frank discussion with your children about money, I encourage you to do so. Talk to your advisor about how to ensure your children have the tools needed to accomplish your goals and theirs. Talk about your wealth. Be candid. Share your views on money with them. Tell them why it is important and explain the responsibilities that accompany wealth. These are important conversations, and both you and your children will be glad you had them. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Solid Advice, Solid Solutions. Thank you, Jolene and Felicia, both for joining me here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.